All right, so previously we styled our buttons, okay, which happen to be our unordered list inside of our div with the class buttons. And if you recall, we were able to see our unordered list. Now, I can't really select the bullets, but you might be able to see them there on the background, right here and right up here. But it's the bullets to the list. We want to get rid of those bullets. Okay, so what we're going to do is go back, and right after our main nav buttons, that div, which positions our unordered list, we're going to now target main nav buttons again, and then we'll drill down a little further to the unordered list. Okay, so main nav, then buttons, and then the unordered list in our compound selector. And what we do is we zero out the margin and the padding, and we're going to set the list style type to none. This gets rid of the bullets. And there's other values you could set the property to, and you might want to explore those. But when you're creating navigation, we want to get rid of those bullets. So we're going to go ahead and save. And now when we refresh, so if you can see the bullet right there, you might have to really look careful, but I think you can see them in the video. Okay, just once I refresh, you'll notice the bullets have gone away and the type moved up here. Okay, and those bullets are gone. So we zeroed out the margin, zeroed out the padding, got rid of the bullets. One of the first steps in creating navigation out of an unordered list. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to turn both of those list items into anchors. So let's go ahead and find the list item, and let's just add our anchor element, and we'll do one here on next, like so. And if we open an anchor is a closed element, so let's make sure we close our anchor correctly, like so. So the list item opens, then the anchor closes, list item closes. So we make sure that they're nested in the correct order. So now after the anchor, let's go ahead, and what we want to do is href equals and our quote mark, and we're going to do the same for this one here. All right, href equals quote, and we're not going to use a target on this one like I believe I showed you in another exercise, because when we click the button for previous or next, we want the page to replace itself. We don't want to keep opening new tabs, so we're going to let the page replace itself. So we're not going to call out a target. Now the path is kind of a tough stumbling block here at times, but we'll all learn it. It'll all be okay in the end. So in this href, I'm going to paste the path, and then I'm going to make this window narrower so it's a little easier to see. Okay, so I'm not sure if maybe I can get it all to fit in here. All right, so in this example, we're using the mat server. For the Art 344 students, of course, you're going to use the Rogue server, and you're going to use a similar concept. You're going to target the index page of the student in the folder above you and the folder below you. So you should be able to, the 344 students should be able to figure it out based on what we're doing here as an example. So again, we're targeting our server. We're going specifically to this class. We're getting into this folder, then the specific student's name. Then inside the student's folder is the exercise 4. Then we are opening up their index. And it looks like I got an extra index in there, okay? So it's only real difference on the 344 students is once they're into the class and their class time, then they go to the projects folder, then they go to the exercise folder, and then in the exercise folder is the student's name. And the student's name would then have the index inside. So your path structure is a little different, but the concept is the same. All right. Now let's just go ahead and copy this same path. So what you need to do is make sure that for the Math students, you're going to change this to the name of the student that has the folder right above yours on the server. Okay? And then on this one, you're going to change the student's name to the student just underneath your folder. And if they have created an exercise 4 folder and they've created an index, then the link should be complete. Okay? We're going to find out when we start writing these to the server. You won't really be able to test it until everyone has their content on the server. And the worst you're going to have to do is update a couple of links. All right, so we're going to go ahead and save. Okay, so now we have made an anchor out of, or a link out of our 2 list items. And now we need to start styling those. Okay, so if we save and we were to do a preview here, chances are we're going to see the previous and the next turn into hyperlinks. Okay, so they're the default blue hyperlinks. And right now we're going to get an error because they're not going to the correct folder. Or I should say, it just has student name, and that doesn't exist, so you'll get an error. Okay, so chances are when you click on this, it's just not going to do what you think. Okay, that'll all get fixed later on. All right. Okay, so let's take a step back, and what we need to now do is begin to style those buttons. Okay, those hyperlinks. So I'm going to get our code here, and again, I'm copy pasting this. This would take us forever if you had to sit there, and not sure why. I think I had that selected. Okay, there we go. Again, it would take us forever if I were typing these out and explaining them at the same time. So it's just faster to copy paste in. Okay, so let's talk about this. We have main nav buttons UL, which is pretty much what we have here. Sorry, didn't think that was going to jump down like that. All right, so what we've added is now we're going to include the list item. Okay, so we're now targeting down to the list item. And then next, A. All right, as you can well see, there's the anchor tag after the list item. And then what we're doing what's called a pseudo class here, or a pseudo. So what we're dealing with, matter of fact, technically this as a whole is called a pseudo class. Okay, we're using these classes to eventually get down to this pseudo, and the pseudo is the colon link part. And basically the pseudo, what this means is it has default function. It does something on its own. It's part of the HTML, CSS standard. Okay, more so the HTML. So a link, a hyperlink, is going to be purple with an underline until you click on it, and then it's blue with an underline. So we're gonna hijack the default function, and we're going to make the link look the way we want. So this first part, main nav buttons UL li a colon link, targets the hyperlink. Then we have a comma, and then what we're going to do is we're going to target the next pseudo and its function. So now we have main nav buttons UL LI A colon visited. So that is the visited state. So when we click on the button is going to continue to look like the hyperlink and not take on the default characteristics of the visited state. And then we can take a look at our rules here. Okay, so we're dealing with position. I'm going to set the position to relative. So it's going to be positioned relative to the nav. Okay, and I'm going to set the width, the nav element. So the width is going to be 100 pixels. The height will be 40. The line height, this is a little trick here. So if I set the line height and the height to match, then the font, the type inside, will vertically align top to bottom. Okay, we're going to set some margin, 0 on the top, 20 pixels on the right, and then 0 on the bottom, 0 on the left. We're going to zero out the padding. I'm going to use the default Verdana with a sans serif backup. The font size will be 14 pixels. Let's just modify this. So 14 pixels, we could probably say 0.8 rem. Okay. The font weight will be 700. Our color is going to be white, and it's going to be 80% opaque because this is RGB-A, RGB alpha. The text decoration, we're going to hijack the text decoration and make it go away. We're going to set the text align to center. So now we have center type inside of an element that is 100 pixels wide. And because we're matching our line height and our height, our text is going to be centered. The text will be centered top to bottom also, or vertically, which is nice. All right, background color is going to be this color here. I don't recall what it was. We're going to find out though. I'm going to set the display to block. So what we're going to do is we're going to force the element. We're going to force that hyperlink that is an inline element. Instead of just capturing the space that is the text, we're going to display the entire block of the element. So we're going to force the entire 100 pixel width and the 40 pixel height to display itself. So it will be part of the button and not just right around the text itself, just the words itself, but actually expand to the width and height which we have set. We're going to do a little trick here. It's called floating. We're going to float our element to the left. So that's how our two buttons are going to get on the left hand side. Okay, it's a little odd, but that's what's going to happen. So we're floating them to the left, and then we have to do something called a clear, and we're going to set the clear to none. Okay, which would allow other elements to, if we did clear both, then they would stack up. But we're doing float left, clear none, so they'll go next to each other. One will float, then the next one will float to the left. We're going to set a border of 1 pixel. The border will be solid, and then we're going to make the border white, and the border radius will be 20 pixels. So the height is 40. If we set the border radius to half the height, we should end up with nice rounded corners. Okay, so we'll get nice rounded corners on the end of this triangle. And then transition, all. This is a little animation. So a transition, and you can look this up, but it's just a CSS sort of animation. Not sort of, it's an animation. So what we're going to do with this transition is we're going to tell all the properties to all the properties, which means all of these properties up here, if we were to change any of them, okay, at one point, then they would all have a transition. Think of a transition of going from one color to another color, one opacity to another opacity, one size to another size, something like that. Anyway, so we're going to create this transition of all the properties which we could potentially change. We're going to have this transition happen in 0.6 seconds, okay? And we deal here, so it's like 0.6 milliseconds. This is going to be what is called an ease in, ease out. So we can do linear. Think of how a car accelerates. When a car accelerates from a dead stop to a top speed, and it does so over a period of time. It doesn't instantaneously get to the top speed. Same would be true of braking. That's the concept here. We're going to start from dead stop. We're going to accelerate to what is our speed, and then we're going to decelerate. So you're going to have an animation that starts, speeds up, slows down. Now it's happening in 0.6 seconds, so you're not going to really notice it, but that's the concept. Okay, if we did a linear, it would be a bit more of a flash. This is going to have kind of a pulse to it, but it's going to be subtle. Okay, so we've just taken care of the two states for the pseudo link and the pseudo visited. There's two more states that we need to deal with. So I'm going to go ahead and get those rules. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and copy the next rules here. Okay. My file's not playing nice with me here. I'll get it. All right. I'll fix this here. And now what we're looking at is we have, again, our pseudo class, main nav, buttons, ul, li, a, colon, hover. This is the state when we actually have the cursor over the button. Okay? And then a comma, and we have our next pseudo class. And in this case, main nav, buttons, ul, li, a colon, active. Active is when you are actively clicking on the link. Okay, so you have four states. You have the link itself. You have the link after it's been visited. You have the link when you're hovering over it, and you have the link while you're actually clicking on it. So in programming, they would call these events that happen. All right. So all we're going to do when we're hovering, or even when we're in the active click state, is we're going to change the background color. And we're going to change the background color to what I have here. And again, I don't remember what color I placed in here, but we're going to find out here in a moment. Okay. Then of course I added a comment just to let us know that our main fixed navigation ends. And I'm not 100% sure. Let me take a look in my code snippets here. If I had, I did. I may have already placed it. Let's take a look. Let's just go up real quick. And main fixed navigation, I did have that. Okay, so we'll scroll back down. We'll save. Let's go to our preview. And what we should do is we should see in the last preview when we had our unordered list, where we zeroed out the unordered list as far as margin and padding, and then we set the bullet list to none, okay, list style type to none, and we worked with its position to get it to come over to this side. All right, so let's go ahead and do a refresh, and we should see our two buttons as we styled them. Okay, and you will see we have these nice round corners, and then when I place the cursor, okay, we'll see that we now go from this light gray background to sort of a lime green background. Okay, all right, so we've created our navigation. We have formatted elements in our navigation, and we have created a previous and a next button. And then we also used our pseudo classes, and our hyperlinks to style the two buttons. And then let's just double check. If you remember back, we've set our navigation to a width of 100%. Okay, so you'll see that this will in fact, so if I go off the screen over here, you'll see that everything will stretch to be 100%. Okay, it's being a little slow because I'm doing this on a video, but at a certain point, remember we set the width to have a max width of 950. And we didn't test that at the time, but there it is. We have reached 950. So the window will get more narrow or narrower, okay? But you'll notice that the buttons stopped moving over to the left. So the navigation will only get to 950 pixels because we use that minimum width at the beginning there, okay? All right, so we have finished our navigation area. And I should note that when we scroll, you'll see that your content goes behind and the navigation does indeed stay fixed.